Good morning, everybody. Guys, the reason why we're here is because bumped into a unique formula in working with Micah and in Fort Drum. And that formula is that we like to work with individuals that are on the ground in a particular market that provide us with a dual role. And that dual role is he can buy and sell properties as a real estate agent. And he's also the property manager with the 300 plus doors. So he knows the market in and out. It's a one-stop shop. So if Robin decides to sell a property in the future, she can go to Micah. Micah can list it. If she decides to buy a property, she can go to Micah and she can go ahead and find a property through Micah. And then he can be the property manager. So it provides a very efficient way to acquire properties. So looking at that model, I'm on the lending side. I'm licensed in all 50 states. I do all loans. I'm a subject matter expert. I would say DSCR, reverse mortgages, VA loans, but I do all loans. I have loans going in different parts of the country based on what the needs are of that particular borrower. I recognized an opportunity, and the opportunity is okay, Fort Drum is an amazing market, but where else could we also find an amazing market, right, that makes sense? And so today we're going to be talking about two markets during this 1 hour and 10 minutes. And that's going to be Fort Drum, which is a completely different market than the Indianapolis market that we're also going to talk about. And the high level for Fort Drum is that Fort Drum is a cash flow play. That is meaning you're going to cash flow on the properties in the Fort Drum marketplace for a couple different reasons. One is the barrier to entry, they're lower cost, lower price point. And the rents are exceptionally high for a couple of different reasons. There's a couple different economic backstops in the Fort Drum market that drive the rents higher. One being Fort Drum, the base. Number two being the fact that there's a lot of Section 8, right, which they pay top of the market. So that's the high level for the Fort Drum market. The second part of this is going to be Indianapolis. Indianapolis is a completely different play. Indianapolis is a market where you're going to go in and you're going to say, okay, this really isn't a cash flow play. I mean, you can buy a $150,000 property that's performing well in Fort Drum, and you can cash flow between $500 to $700 per month. Okay, that's when it's performing well. In the Indianapolis market, as we're going to see later on in this presentation, it's going to be more of a appreciation play, kind of like what we have here in California, unless you put a lot of money down. So, but in the Indianapolis market, we have the similar scenario where we've got a property management company that's lined up, very professional, which is the Polaris Property Management Company. And unfortunately, they don't buy and sell. So we connected also with an agent who's very busy, who focuses on investment type of clientele. And unfortunately, he had a closing issue this morning, and that's derailing him from being here today. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Indianapolis. But there's some economic drivers when we get to Indianapolis that make it a really, really strong play from the perspective of growth in that community and why it's growing. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the people that are on the call, Robin is the star. That's why she gets the picture. I'm Michael Panco. And Micah Madison, he's also here today. He's representing Fort Drum on the sale buy side as a realtor and also as the property manager go-to in that market. Dan Baldini, also traveling when we set this up. He owns Polaris Property Management Group, very professional group. And then we have Mark Studebaker, who's also out of Indianapolis. And he unfortunately had a closing issue this morning and he's in his car. And he couldn't join us. So that's the players. But of course, if you decide to do something in Indianapolis, we can go ahead and get you connected to them. So let's talk a little bit about Fort Drum first. And I'm going to start this, and then I'm going to be handing it over to Micah to talk about some of this. But in the Fort Drum marketplace, you have federal payroll. Why? Because you've got a large, very secure Army base, which is Fort Drum. 10 Mountain is stationed there, and they're doing a lot of things to advance that base. So you have a lot of military members and government employees that saturate the Fort Drum area, which again, federal payroll is strong. People that have federal jobs get paid. And we're going to talk a little bit later about why basic allowance for housing also makes for a strong play as a landlord, because military members have to pay their rent. If they don't, they get in a lot of trouble. And they're paid well for their basic allowance for housing. So that makes it for a strong play. Civilian rents, on the other side of that, is we've got a lot of Section 8. Section 8 pays top of the market. They've got to pay their rent as well. Not always the best, let's say, socioeconomic, right, in terms of the actual client itself, but they get paid to pay their rent, and they pay top of the market for that. And I'm sure that Mike is going to talk about that. So let's talk about it. So $2.48 billion in terms of the economic impact that the military base has on the local marketplace. That's a lot of money that comes into the Fort Drum area, right? A lot of money. Real high level snapshot, the multifamily median sales price is about $160,000. Again, multifamily being 1 to 4, probably a duplex in this case. Median 3-bedroom rent, Micah, you can agree or disagree with this. It's about $1,478 per unit, right? And E5, this is that basic allowance for housing. If you can't see this, hopefully you guys can see the presentation. But I know this, and I confirm this through the Department of Defense and their basic allowance for housing calculator, is that an E5, which is really where a sergeant, that's where the threshold is. They get married, they start to live off base. They're getting paid about $1,665 just to go towards their rent. That's a lot of money. That's not coming out of their pay. That's additional pay on top. So again, very strong rental market. And then on-post personnel, we're somewhere in the neighborhood north of 17,000 people that make that base work between the military and the civilians that actually work there. So a very strong economic base. So the military anchor, we've talked about that. There's also a sub-anchor, which is the outdoor economy. There's a lot of tourism that occurs, maybe not in the Fort Drum area, but past Fort Drum in the surrounding areas, right? You can see here that the, Mike, I'm going to say this wrong, is it the Adirondack Park? Is that correct?
Adirondack, yep.
Adirondack Park, right? That's a huge contributor, right? It's one of the largest in the United States. It's a huge contributor to the tourism as people go to and from, right? As they pass through the areas of the Fort Drum marketplace. And then that adds to the actual service-connected jobs, which then rent in the Fort Drum marketplace. So that's a strong economic driver. And then the 2 rent backstops on the federal side, one being the military and then one being the Section 8. Those are the 2 rent backstops in that market, which in a lot of markets, you don't see that. So we've introduced Michael already. So Michael, I'd love for you to talk to the 2 that are attending today, and we're going to grow this number, I guarantee it. But share with them what it is you do and why you're unique in your market.
Yeah, so Michael talked a lot about the Fort Drum side, and that's definitely that drives a lot of our rental value and a lot of what the tenant we're trying to rent to. That's definitely our focus, is to get the military folks. They're definitely a safer, stronger bet in terms of renter. But the Section 8, which is not just DSS, it's also HUD, Transitional Living Services, TLS. There's a few other programs, Shelter Plus Care. Those are also very quality tenants, and I think you could probably talk to Robin about it, because she has a lot of those tenants in her apartment, but in her building. But it's guaranteed rent. So the programs actually pay top dollar for the apartment. So we might rent a 1-bedroom apartment for $800, but to somebody on a program, you're going to rent to them for closer to $1,000. So you definitely get a stronger rental income. There is the dangers of tenants, beating on the apartment, breaking things inside, that kind of thing. Those are real concerns. The one thing that my team has been able to do is figure out how to flip at low cost. So we work with our contractors to try to get the turnover a lot cheaper, which is awesome. So you can actually take an apartment, have a low-income tenant living there, flip it at the end of the year or every couple of years at very low cost, and then have another one move in. So you're not down very much. So there's definitely a really nice play here in Watertown of low-income tenants at high dollar value cash income, which gives you a bigger monthly rate of return. And then when you have to flip, low cost to repair to get the next tenant in. So it's really an interesting mix of market in this area. Between soldiers, you do still have some, middle class to upper lower class renters that are taking the apartments as well. So it's a really nice mix of tenants up here. So it definitely adds value on the month-to-month perspective.
Yeah, 100%. And again, the reason why, Micah is so important to this whole formula and why this works so well is because he provides the dual role. He's the buy side, he's the sell side, and he's also the property management side. So you have a one-stop shop. And I really appreciate that about Micah. And I've recognized that as a formula that we want to copy. So as we grow and we continue to do these, we'll expand into different marketplaces as well. And at some point, I'm going to get Micah to manage these other property managers. That's my plan. So,
Yep.
Micah, do you have anything else you want to add about your company, about your team?
Yeah, I mean, we have a great team here. I do have a couple of agents that work here, but our focus is the property management. So, really, my focus in working with buyers and sellers is the investor. We do offer services if you're looking to buy a house here. We do have that. I have a couple of agents that do that, but my focus is on the investor. So, I don't want to say only, but I 99% of the time work with the investors. So because of that, we dial right in on what your rate of return is going to be. It's for me, the investor is everything. We do the property management. We have a great staff here of different positions, and we've got a guys in charge of all the maintenance. I've got somebody in charge of all late rents. I've got different people built in, leasing agent, all that kind of stuff. But for us, it's all about the investor and making sure that your needs are met 100% of the time. So it's definitely a great organization, and we've really created it so that there's only one property manager here, which is me. And so if there's ever a problem, I'm your go-to one person contact. I might get other people involved. So if it's a maintenance related issue, I'll bring Steven in or something like that. But for the most part, you're only dealing with me on the owner side. So I'm a one-stop shop for anything related to your property, which has created, honestly, I think the success that we've had.
100%. Yeah. Every client that I've referred over to you really appreciates that one-stop shop. That's a big value add, big time.
Well, and I'll pop in here and validate that. Micah does, and I've asked a lot of questions, and there's been some things that have gone on just in the short time that I've owned that. And I will tell you, he's very responsive. He's got the good answers. He's on top of things. His people are on top of things. Sometimes the answers aren't what you want to hear, but at the same time, if we're all in business and we know everything doesn't always go the way you want it to, but he's on top of everything. And I do trust that he is taking really good care of that. And, and I don't have to go to New York.
Yeah.
So
I would like to also add on that is because of people like Robin and investors outside. I mean, Robin lives in Texas and she doesn't necessarily want to come to New York. I mean, hopefully someday you'll come to New York and visit us here, but that'll just be for pleasure and not necessarily business related.
And it will be in the spring and summer when it's cooler up there and it's hot down here.
Maybe not so much when it's 4 feet of snow on the ground, but to help Robin and every other investor I have, we have set up from start to finish, everything's in place. So when you call us and you invest with me and we find that property for you, I have an insurance guy that does all my insurance, who's incredible and will make sure that you're covered. I have an inspector who will inspect the property, who's New York State licensed inspector, who will treat you right, give you a very well detailed report on the property. You'll know everything about the property. We have an attorney. They're phenomenal. They really do a great job. So every aspect from start to finish of everything you're going to need, we have a team for. And everybody that I've mentioned is all individually licensed. So they're not like, my brother's cousin, my brother who happens to know a little bit about building. Like, these are all legitimately licensed people with the goal of making your investment a lot easier. So you can trust the whole process instead of just one portion of it. So,
Agreed.
100%. So guys, some high points on the marketplace in the Fort Drum area. So 19.7% of the regional workforce is tied to the Fort Drum market or Fort Drum base. Okay, that's a big percent. That's 20%. It's one of the largest employers in the state of New York. 4.9% of the basic allowance for housing, it's increased by 4.9% from last year to this year. So again, that's going up, allowing a landlord to bump up their rent a little bit right around the base there because, again, the service members can handle it. Plus 11% Section 8, right? The standard market rents are about $1,222 for a similar unit, but you can actually charge $1,360 as an average for a Section 8. And then 16,000 active soldiers in the 10th Mountain Division, right? They deploy all the time. They're very active there. That base is not going away. So it's not on the cut list, if you will. So it's very secure economically. And then 160,000 is the median multifamily entry level price. That's now there is A level properties, B level properties, and C level properties. And we're going to talk about those next. And each come with their own je ne sais quoi, if you will, right? C level properties have got some more issues, different kinds of tenants. Your B level properties, which are probably the 200 to 250, are going to be a little bit nicer, maybe more updated. And then, of course, I'm going to let Micah finish up and talk about, the properties as a whole, which A-level properties are going to be those that are really ready to go, ready to rock, not going to have a lot of issues. And you're going to have a different tenant that also occupies those properties as well. I would assume, Micah, some of that is around the base, some of the A-level properties. But if you want to talk about A, B, and C real quick, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, so in all honesty, there's not a lot of A-level properties in Watertown. To be honest, even if you had one, my suggestion to you would be to search for the B levels that are a little bit less money. Your A-level properties, while they're nice and there's no issues, they're also going to come, somebody's put all that work in, and so you're not going to get it for as good of a price. Chances are you're not going to be able to negotiate much, and that kind of thing. A B-level property is really solid in this area. You're going to get it for a little bit less. Usually a B average property, you're going to get between 160 and 220, 230, somewhere in there. Your A levels are going to be above 230, and then your C levels, definitely you're going to make money on them for sure. To kind of give you an idea, I picked up a C level. Actually, I'm buying one right now. I got it for basically 130,000. It's a quadplex. That's pulling $2,700 a month. After all my expenses, I'm going to make about $1,500 a month. So it's a really high cash flowing property. It's a C level for sure, no doubt about it. But there's just so much upside in it. So I put a little bit of money into it. I could easily get money back after the sale. I could definitely make my money on whatever money I put into it. It's going to constantly cash flow because the prices are so low on the mortgage and the expenses on the property. So on C levels, you could definitely still make a lot of monthly money. Your B's, you're still doing very well. So the A's are doing well if you can, depending on where they are. So if you go, Mike, can you go to that other the map that you had there? So this map is really important. Your biggest areas that you're going to have is the A levels are going to be in Clayton, some in Watertown, Carthage, a little bit. Those are where you're going to find your A levels. You're going to be paying a lot more for them. They'll probably be a little bit newer in terms of age. Most of the stuff you're going to find are B's and C's. City of Watertown is full of rental properties. Actually, the statistic I heard, I think it was last month, said that 60% of the houses in the city of Watertown are investor occupied. So there's tenants that are living in them. The other 40% are owner occupied. So there's definitely a higher number of properties that are rentals. Watertown and Carthage are the two biggest areas for rentals. Every house that you find is going to be 1900s to 1950. These houses are older. The issues you're going to find are probably have to replace furnaces, water heaters, eventually a roof. But these houses have stood up for 100 years. So in terms of age of properties, they're quality properties. They've been around for a while. They've already settled, so you don't have to worry about that. You're just doing kind of upkeep of the property. The other areas on there: Calcium, Evans Mills, Black River, Pamelia, which isn't on there, Sackett's Harbor. It's actually Sackett's Harbor is a little different, but the other ones are very. They're more of a smaller community, like a small village. If you pick up a property in there, you may pay a little bit more for it for a B average, but you're also getting a smaller community. So soldiers coming into the area are going to want to stay there, want to live there because of the size of the community that they're in. they're also the closest to Fort Drum. Calcium, Evans Mills, Black River are all less than a mile from Fort Drum. So you're going to get a lot of soldiers in those areas. That's a high, from a rental standpoint, that's a huge play. That's a really nice feature to have. Watertown, you're going to get more of your DSS, those types of tenants. The government subsidy programs are going to come in Watertown more, because a lot of those types of tenants don't have vehicles. So that's where they're going to want to live, either there or Carthage is another one, like in the case of a couple of the tenants that Robin has. So it's definitely it's an interesting market. Sackett's Harbor, I said I'd talk about that one a little bit. That's not on the map. It's to the left side of Watertown area, kind of right where it says Samaritan Health in Watertown. That's right above where that sign is. That's where Sackett's Harbor is. It's right on the water. It's actually a historic community. It's where part of the Battle of 1812 was fought. And so there's a lot of soldiers that live in Sackett's Harbor. That is a huge place for military. If you can pick up a property in Sackett's Harbor, do it. That's your closest to a Class A that we're going to have. The quality of the tenant is higher. I've got a property out there. Actually, I got a few properties in Sackett's that I manage, and I never have any type of vacancy. If we get a property out there that loses a tenant, it's rented usually within a week, because people want to be there. Now, the cost of entry is much higher in Sackett's Harbor, but the quality of the tenant you're going to get is also much higher. So really, really good area for investment. But my recommendation for anybody entering this for the first time is to get a B average property. And I think you'll be set up for success. The properties that he has on the screen here, these are all B average. 206 South Hamilton is actually a really decent property. It's a high B. That I think is the best one on that list. As a duplex, it's 3 bedrooms and a 2-bedroom. But the quality on that one, I've been in there. It's just an overall great property. They're right now rented at about $2,200 a month. I do think that there's definitely room for improvement on the rentals. The first floor apartment's 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. If I was renting that, I'd be getting $1,500 a month for it. The second one, apartment 2, is a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. They're at $950 right now. For me, I'd be renting that closer to $1,200 or $1,300 a month. So there is definitely upside in the rentals. This is a slam dunk property in terms of getting quality tenants, because it's actually a much nicer unit. So I do think that you have a better shot of getting better quality of tenants, which will make you more money. You'll probably get the military folks in that one. The 108 Flower Ave West property is the most expensive one on there. I don't like this one much. And it's a 3-unit, but it doesn't really pull a ton of money. Like there's, even on the 3, you'll still make $3,400 a month. But the location of the property would make it a more difficult to rent. Now, the only option that would actually improve it is if you turn the 1-bedroom apartment into like a professional Airbnb, which is an option. And then you can make a lot more money with that. The location to the hospital with that property is, it's basically next door. It's right around the block. And so if you have ever had any interest in a professional Airbnb, that'd be a decent property for that. So I definitely think there's 310 Gotham, decent property, but on this list, my favorite is the 206 South Hamilton for sure. And we can definitely help you. I can set you guys up if you want it with looking at properties as they become available. If there's something that's attractive, I definitely can. We can have more conversation. I can tell you what your rents would be and so on and so forth. So really great properties. B average is definitely the way to go. High Bs are awesome because you can usually pick them up a little bit cheaper. So yeah, thank you.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Guys, these are everybody, if you can see the screen, yeah, 310 Gotham Street, that's an active listing. 206 that Michael likes a lot is an active contingent, and the 108 Flower is also an active listing. So I pulled these last night. I wanted to get the latest and greatest to provide examples. So these are all opportunities if you wanted to talk to Michael. So before we move into Indianapolis, let's talk a little bit about how do you qualify for these loans. Most of the time, the loans that I'm doing for investor is the DSCR, which is debt service coverage ratio loan, DSCR. And the reason why that loan is so popular with investors is, and especially for you that are on the call that are real estate agents, and I think all of us are in either the lending or on the realtor side on this in this call, is because it does not look at your monthly income. It does not say, we want to see your tax returns, your W-2s, K-1s. We don't want to see any of that with a debt service coverage ratio loan. What we want to know is what is your FICO score? And we want to know, do you have the capital to make the investment, which is generally a 20%, depending on your experience and if you currently own a home and if you had rentals, or a 25% down payment. Now, of course, you can always do a larger down payment if you wanted to, but the typical is 20 to 25%. So those are the two things that we look at in terms of qualifying your FICO score, and generally 680 and above is where we're going to be with most of our lenders. We can go as low as 620 with one of the investors that I work with. And again, this is nationwide, but 680 and above is generally where we want to be. 720 and above is a sweet spot, and we actually get an improvement in the rate quite a bit. So what is a DSCR loan? A DSCR loan actually looks at the property and says, does the property pay for itself? Meaning if we have a 2-bedroom, let's look at 310 Gotham Street, and you put a 20% down payment on that. All right. Does the PITI payment, not what we're going to pay Micah and his fee for his 10% management fee, not for the power, but does the PITI payment, is it covered by the actual rents collected on the property? So in this case, I can tell you right now, is that a 20% down payment on $170,000, your actual PITI payment wouldn't be anywhere close to $2,000 a month. So in that case, we're better than what we call a 1-to-1 ratio. And that means is if we have $1 of mortgage payment, do we have $1 of rent covering it? Well, in this case, we'd have more rent covering your PITI payment. And I would say that on a $170,000 purchase with 20% down, you're going to be somewhere probably right around $1,300 to $1,400 a month tied to an actual mortgage payment, depending on the interest rate and your FICO score. So the DSCR loans are a great way. And there's more to talk about with DSCR loans, but I won't do it here. We can always talk later. But we'd want to get pre-qualified first. I don't want to see your, do we have the capital in order to do it? What does your credit report look like? And again, it's not a debt to income ratio. We don't look at what debts you have. We look at, is the property going to cover it? What is your FICO score? And do you have the capital to make the down payment? We can talk later about what that looks like. So that's the DSCR loan. And that's where most people are doing it. If we do a conventional investment purchase, they're going to want tax returns, K-1s, 1099s. They're going to want a lot. And most people say, you know what, peace out. I don't want to go there. That's just too much, especially as agents and also as mortgage professionals, because we have incomes that are up and down, right? It's always not the best, but we have money in the bank. So that's what works out for us a lot, and investors as well. So with that said, next we've got, again, we're right at 11:36, so we're not behind. I'm going to go high level with Indianapolis, and what makes Indianapolis such a great place to also potentially invest as well. It's a different play. If you want to buy something in cash flow immediately, Fort Drum is the place to go. If you're like, you know what, I'd really like to get into a property that's a little bit maybe higher end, it's got a different socioeconomic attached to it, and I'm okay with being a patient investor, and I'm okay, and I like the 4 to 6% appreciation per year, that might be the play for you. Unfortunately, the two gentlemen that were going to be on the call today, I knew one wasn't going to be, which is Dan Baldini. He's the property manager. I knew that he was not going to be. But Mark, unfortunately, who's a realtor and a subject matter expert in working with investors, he had a he had a closing issue this morning, and so he got delayed. So he's not on the call. But there are areas of Indianapolis that we want to focus on. And why is Indianapolis so strong? Well, there's a couple reasons. They have two major professional sports teams there. Eli Lilly has put $13 billion into that marketplace. And one of the other facets that drives the economy in the Indianapolis area, especially up in the northwest quadrant, is logistics hubs. FedEx, UPS, and some of the others are based there. There's some of the second, I think FedEx is the second largest hub in the world that's based out of Indianapolis. And why? Because Indianapolis is within 24 to 48 hours of most major cities within the US, making it an excellent play for the logistics, which drives a lot of economic activity, a lot of service sector related employees, a lot of senior level and mid-level management employees buy in and around those logistics hubs. So the economic engine, right? Logistics, catalyst, and then also this investment, what they call LEAP, which is Eli Lilly's. And again, it's $13 billion they're putting into the marketplace to build one of the large, I think it's the largest campus of their company. The population engine, it continues to grow in Indianapolis, right? They have the world's largest auto race there, in Indianapolis 500. We've all heard of it. Just an excellent place for sporting events, logistics, and now Eli Lilly and the supporting industries around that. And then the patient investor math, right? Again, this is not a cash flow play. Can you cash flow? Yes, but very little depending on your down payment and the type of property you buy. They have A, B, and C properties there as well. We were going to focus more on the A and the B level properties today. But again, wishing Mark was here, he would really be able to talk in depth about that. So let me go ahead and keep going here. So again, what are some of the data points? 13 billion of investment by Eli Lilly into the marketplace. The average price for an A grade, right? Single family residence. That's the other thing too, is it in the Watertown, Carthage, Black Forest, that area around Fort Drum, it's going to be a lot of multifamily. This market is different. This is more of your single family residence play. And so the average entry level price, right? I'd say C plus B minus is in that 260 to 290. 9.6% up Lebanon median single family residence sales year over year. So the market is still very strong, still very strong. It's number 2 for FedEx. Like I said earlier, is the hub globally. 80% of the US population can be reached by that location in Indianapolis within 24 to 48 hours. And 4 to 5% is the target cap rate, right? With again, 4 to 6% appreciation in the Indianapolis market. So again, it's more about the patient investor math. Here's the map that we looked at one of these for the Fort Drum marketplace. Here's one for the Indianapolis marketplace. And I mentioned up in the northwest quadrant. This is where you can see here the LEAP, the Eli Lilly, right? And then logistics, Amazon, FedEx. They're all located up here. These are arteries right here, okay? And you can see that around the arteries, things are very busy. Up here in Noblesville, this I-69, right? It's one of the major arteries that runs through Indianapolis. I-65 down here in this quadrant down here with Greenwood and Franklin. But this Whitestown and Lebanon, these are where we've pulled the properties, and this is where we've run most of the math. This is the target right here. If Mark was on the call, he'd say, this is where you want to be for growth, stability, socioeconomics, and the best ROI in terms of appreciation on those properties, which again has been 4 to 6%. That's a really, really strong number. But again, this logistics hub is a big economic driver for the market, as well as Eli Lilly and what they're doing, all the supporting industries in that space. Okay. This is where I really wish we had Mark. Here is some properties that again Mark provided last week. These are active listings, maybe still, but you can see here for a $305,000 purchase, we're talking about $1,700 to $1,800 a month. Now I can tell you that based on just simple math, is that that's probably going to be a break even at best in terms of an investment in terms of cash flow. But you're going to see 4 to 6% appreciation growth on this $305,000. So if you want to be in the market for 5 years and do simple math, you can figure out what you could probably turn around and sell that property for and make some money out of it. Same thing down here with this property, 817 East Washington Street, $295 for the purchase price and about $1,700 a month. Again, these are single family residences, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square feet here. Didn't get the square footage on the East Washington property. Same thing applies over here for this property, 285, again, 1,700, 1,800. Seems to be the going rate, although we do have an outlier here at $2,000 to $2,100 a month. In Lebanon, again, Lebanon, when we go back to the map, Lebanon's right here in that corridor leading up to Eli Lilly and also Amazon and those logistics hubs. So Lebanon has got a very, very strong marketplace. And here's again, this would be a B level property, probably a B minus, and we're pulling in $2,000 to $2,100 a month. Now, 20% to 25% down is going to be a break even scenario in terms of property taxes, your maintenance fee for your Polaris property management company, right? Which you pay them on a monthly basis, which is again 10%. Their standard. I believe, Micah, that's your fee as well, 10% of the gross rents collected.
Right.
So you're going to be a break even here, but again, the play is the actual appreciation of the property itself over a 3 to 5 to 6 year timeline horizon. So side by side, when we look at these properties, Fort Drum, absolutely a cash flow play. Right, very solid economic drivers with Fort Drum, the military presence there, and then of course the Section 8. And Michael, you used a term today I wasn't familiar with. You said DSS?
Yeah, Department of Social Services.
Department of Social Services, right? Those are very strong economic drivers, which provide you with a strong rental base there. Again, those are the federal backstops we talked about, a stable tenant pool, and then entry price. Absolutely cannot beat Fort Drum. It's one of the best in the country. In terms of entry level pricing. I mean, 170 is not the bottom of the barrel there. I mean, Mike and I have done deals together where we've seen somebody purchase a $150,000 property, and they've cash flowed $500 a month on that $150,000 property. That's unheard of, right? So you can go lower again, but that's going to be a C-level property. When we look over to Indianapolis, this is absolutely an appreciation play, right? For tomorrow, for that patient investor, appreciates 3 to 5, 3 to 6%, depending on who you're talking to. The catalysts in that market are Eli Lilly, again, with their $13 billion in investments, and of course, the logistics hubs. Those are significant, and they're not going away. I mean, I don't think there's not too many things we don't buy anymore that don't require a truck to deliver it to either your house or to your city. Those logistics hubs are not going away. And so those are the markets, guys. Would like to open it up for any questions you might have for Micah regarding Fort Drum, and then also with me regarding DSCR loans. So if you want to unmic or unmute, we'd love to have your participation today.
Melanie or Beth, do you have any questions or anything? You can throw it in the chat if you need to.
Okay, thank you. I don't right now. Thank you, though. Taking all this in. I appreciate it.
Well, and I'll tell you what I've got is a fourplex. Yes, we can share the PowerPoint. I did record this, Beth, so we can, I'll send out the recording as well to you so that you'll have the whole thing. Like I said, I bought a fourplex. When I first met Micah, I was talking about a duplex, and for just a little bit more, a fourplex, you may always have one empty, but if you've got 3 that are paying their rent, that's going to cover and then some. So your turnover doesn't hit you as hard when you've got those that are moving on and leaving for whatever reason. Michael, Beth said, are you looking at other markets to develop where there are military bases?
Yes, the answer is yes. The other market that I'm looking at, though, immediately, which we can include in the next seminar, is Cleveland, Ohio. That's another market. And then I have not done much work in the Fort Bragg area, but I'm familiar with that area, and it's on my list. So I'd like to get that same, again, the combination that I'm looking for, which, could we go to that market? We could go like that, right? We could just find a realtor, and we could go out and we could do some shopping. But really the key and the strategy that we're developing here is having somebody like Micah who can do both, buy, sell, and then provide the property management services, which again, this is why the Fort Drum play is so strong. So strong. Not only is the barrier to entry very low, but the cash flow is right. You've got the 2 economic engines, and you've got a great guy like Micah who's there to drive it forward for you and manage it on a daily basis. So that's what I'm looking for in these other markets. So yes, the answer is yes. And as they say, coming to a theater soon.
So Beth also says, I'm interested in doing this for purposes of providing affordable housing for people who are in recovery programs. So for example, in a location like South Dallas. So she has, you know, another thought, you know, on how to utilize these properties in South Dallas. You know, she says, for example, sober living, and those are becoming a big, you know, just like senior living and senior residential care homes and things like that are becoming a big thing. So are like sober living and people, you know, getting out of domestic violence and those sort of transitional kind of housing.
Right.
Do you see this working for that type of an owner?
Oh, for the sober living, absolutely. Yeah, the DSCR loan, absolutely for the sober living. The sober living, those are great opportunities. I mean, great opportunities. You take a property that rents out for $1,500 to $2,000 a month, and now you're pulling in $3,500 to $4,000 a month for that same property because they rent it out by the room. So it's what do they call that? They call that house hacking, basically, right? Micah, do you have any properties
shared
like
living?
that? in
What
Shared
we call
living?
shared living.
Yeah, they're called SRO, single room occupancies.
Yeah.
We actually have one in New York that I was talking with Panco about. It's it actually used to be, it was Angels Inn is what it was called. It was a senior care facility that shut down in 2017. And we bought it and renovated it for transitional living people. So people come out of jail or, you know, like the, you know, homeless that are going from whatever domestic violence they were in into a, you know, trying to get to a better place, whatever. But that was, and we had the owner that I had at the time bought this property for 200,000. They renovated it, put 300 into it. So they put about 500 total into this property, and they're renting it out for $10,000 a month to one organization. We had that for a couple of years. He ended up selling the property. Right now it's a Airbnb, but we have had the conversation of going back to senior care with that building, or maybe not even senior care, but rehab facility, where you have a senior citizen that has to like a live-in rehab. It's already set up for that. It would not be a difficult transition to get that property to do a senior rehab type or day treatment facility for those folks. So there's definitely properties and opportunities here for that as well. Yeah, great idea. Yep. And the nice thing about that one is I think at the time, Mike, we were talking about, you know, $4,000 a month per room on 18 rooms. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so the valuation on that would go from, I think the sales price on that was like 700,000. I mean, it was pretty attractive.
Down to 500 right now. They've dropped it
Is it?
considerably. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So in talking to a commercial investor that I work with on larger commercial loans, is that you take a property like that, and if you were able to really maximize it, like Micah was saying, you're getting $4,000 a month per room, and you multiply that times 17 or 18. Now you're talking about a property that you purchased for 500,000, and now that property is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 to 3 million, based on the economics, which you could sell it for to an actual business. So those are some pretty amazing opportunities. But yeah, the SRO, the shared living, the those do very, very well.
So Michael, Beth saying, I'm not sure if you're looking at the chat. Bringing the program to Dallas would require what in terms of people to get it going? What if she were to put a team together for something like this in Dallas and work with you guys and work with you? What would she? What would she? I mean, I could help her on the real estate side.
Right. So what we're looking for is somebody like Mike, a property manager, right, who's got a lot of experience. They've got a team, and they understand the lay of the land. Like I can call and Micah can say, hey, you know what? That's like he just said today. I'm not really like that property too much, right? Mike has either been in all these properties or he manages these properties. So somebody who's got a lot of experience. If you're representing the real estate side, is that you just have a knowledge of working with investors and what how a DSCR loan works, because that's where they're going to want to be. And we can absolutely put that together. You guys have a strong veteran base too. I would think that there's probably something like a sober living or a SRO type situation that could be tied to veterans, because you have such a strong veteran community in Dallas, and we should probably think about that. So thank you, everybody. Robin, thank you so much for pulling your group together on this side to get them here today. We really do appreciate that. And thank you for attending. Micah, thank you so much for being on the call. We really do value our relationship and your professionalism and what you bring to the table. So thank you so much. And of course, Mark's not here. God, I wish he was. He would have been so good at talking about Indianapolis, but that'll be for another time. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Robin.
All right, we'll try and do another one of these in a couple months so that if you want to come back with some different ideas and all of that, we'll try and pull it back together again.
Let's do one for Dallas.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you.